Yes. Yeah, so as Tiago said, I'm an experience designer here at ThoughtWorks. I've been doing design to varying degrees for about the last 10 years, the last 4 of which have been doing UX design specifically. Previous to that, I was a print designer, graphic and visual designer, and before that even, I did theater. So that's kind of where my creative and artistic roots come from, is back from my theater days. But yes, now I'm in UX and I'm here at ThoughtWorks. I've been at ThoughtWorks for about 1.5 years. So to get started tonight, first of all, I just want to get a little bit of a sense of who's here, what's kind of our general level of familiarity with UX. How many of you have heard, do you know what user experience design, or heard the term before? Yeah? All right. How many of you have worked with a user experience designer before?
Nah.
Okay. And how many of you could confidently say that you could explain what UX design is?
Oh, come on.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, well then I've got my work cut out for us. So hopefully by the end of tonight, you'll be able to explain with a little bit more confidence what UX design is, and what UX designers do, what we care about, why it's an important part of the overall process of project and development process. And I feel really strongly and passionately about UX designers collaborating closely with developers. So since the majority of you are developers here tonight, is that right? How many of you are developers?
Maybe you should ask how many of us are UX designers.
Well, that actually, I've heard of that. How many are UX? Yeah, I know there's a few. Yeah, I've talked to a few of you. Okay, sweet. You guys can help me then. You guys can back me up tonight. Awesome. So hopefully by the end of tonight, you'll be able to find what UX is, and then have some good tips too about how to work well with UX designers should you come across any in your travels. All right. So to get us started, I will just answer the basic question. What is user experience? Who can define it? Anyone? I'd like to hear, what are some definitions of UX design? Yes.
Minimum possible WTFs per minute.
Oh,
Can
you tweet
We probably have to define that definition. I haven't heard that one before. Very good. All
I
right.
think that's pretty good.
What was it? Minimum?
Minimum possible WTFs per minute.
Oh, WTF. Sorry. Okay, got it. Got it. Thank you. Now that makes more sense. So rattle it off quickly. I'm tracking with you now. Very good. That's actually, yes, that could be pretty accurate. It's a good way to describe it. Anyone else?
I'm super liking that tweet.
Any other brave takers? Who's not already a designer, I suppose? Or maybe, actually, sometimes I find that some designers actually struggle with defining what UX design is. I feel like it can be actually commonly misunderstood things in our industry. So no judgment there if that's the case. All right, so what is UX design? It's the overall experience a person has when they're interacting with a product, or how easy and pleasing that product is to use, right? So when we think of a user experience, we're thinking of all the different parts of the experience. So it could be visual, it could be emotional, it could be behavioral response to something. There's probably a memory component to it as well. And it's all around us, right? We're immersed in an experience. So if we kind of look at a broader view of what a general user experience is, it's, what you do on a day-to-day basis. Perhaps going to the airport, you can think of the experience you have going through security, or trying to find your gate, or maybe it's even the buttons that you press when you get into the lift. I've actually had some frustrations with that before. That can be your experience. And of course, we're all in technology, right? So probably how we think of user experience is the way that a user interacts with a website or an application or a business system. That's a lot of times how we understand it, but it's all of the pieces of that. And when we're user experience designers, we really have to consider what the user thinks when they're interacting with a product. Is it delightful? Is it frustrating? A lot of people, you kind of take a step out of our field. Say when I ask my grandma, what she thinks I do, or when you ask somebody else to define what UX design is, and then you kind of take a step back and you go, well, think of an experience that you have that's been really frustrating for you. And everybody can come up with those experiences, right? They can all say, oh, well, this website's terrible and you should change it. That's usually the first thing that comes to mind. And then as a second, kind of a follow-up to that, it's, oh yeah, actually I've had a good experience with this site, or I really like how this thing works. more often than not, it's the things that are frustrating and confusing that people bring up first. But that's our, what user experience designers do, is kind of think about all of the various aspects of that experience. Now, UX design is broken up into 6 core disciplines. So we've got user research, which is understanding who our users are and what their behaviors are and who we're actually designing for. Content strategy, which is actually about planning and organizing and creating the content, digital content specifically in this case. Information architecture, which is in the way that we organize and structure and label content so that users have an easy time locating what they're looking for. Interaction design, which communicates the overall experience and is the kind of the interaction point for our users. Visual design, which is more of the the imagery, the icons, the typography, the colors. It's all of that visual aesthetic stuff. And finally, usability testing, which is putting our product in front of users, understanding and evaluating how well it's received with the user group. So one thing that I think is really commonly misunderstood is the difference between UI, or user interface design, and UX design. So are they the same thing? What do they mean? I'm sure a lot of you have heard those terms. They are not interchangeable. They're actually 2 distinct things, all right? But they're both very closely connected. So user experience design is kind of what we've been talking about, right? But it's the actual process of improving the usability and the interaction of a product. So I want to highlight the word process. Okay? The user interface bit comes in because the UI is what facilitates and communicates the experience. It's the part that the user interacts with. So it's the output of the process of user experience design. So you can't have one without the other. You have to go through the process of UX first to understand what the user needs and how they're going to use it. And then again, the UI is the output of that. It's once we've gone through that whole, we've done our diligence and our research and understanding what the user wants, then we can design the interface. And again, I can't see, they're 2 separate things, but they're also very closely connected, right? They inform one another. So probably a little bit better way of understanding this is with a little bit of a visual, something that's very common that we all understand, eating cereal, right? So here we've got our product. Some of you may have seen this image before. So we've got our product, right? This is what makes up, it illustrates the difference between UI and UX, and it also kind of shows you what makes up a good user experience. So there's our product, right? We've got all the different pieces of our product. It's a collection of all the parts. You've got your bowl and your spoon, your cereal. You need all of those parts to make it up, right? Unless, you're gonna just dig out of the box with your hands, but let's just pretend like that's not an option, okay? We're gonna eat cereal in a very dignified, civilized manner with a spoon out of a bowl, okay? So you've got, your hardware, you've got the thing you're actually gonna consume. So the user interface, so that's the way that the user interacts with the product. It's like the emotional connection that the user has, right? When you think about UI, it's the thing that's very obvious a lot of times. People remember visual things. Oh yeah, I remember that image, or I remember that color, and I remember how it made me feel, right? It's that connection point, that emotional response that somebody has. The spoon connects you to the cereal. It's like your bridge to your food, right? That's the really important part. That's how you get what you want. The user experience is everything. I talked a little bit ago about how it's a visual and it's emotional and it's behavioral, and there's a lot of different pieces to that experience. So when you think about cereal, you can even take a step back and go to the point when you bought the cereal from the store. So maybe you were in the cereal aisle, you're looking at all the options, and you're thinking, oh, I should really get Cocoa Puffs because they're delicious, and I used to eat them all the time as a child. You've got some kind of emotional response happening in the memory of that cereal that you ate when you were a kid. And then you bring it home, and then you open the box, and then you're pouring it into the cereal or into the bowl, and you're hearing the sound that it makes, and you're getting kind of excited because you know deliciousness awaits you very shortly. And you put in the milk, and then when you're eating it, you're experiencing the taste and the texture and the sound that it makes. So it's all of those components, but right, we couldn't have that without our bridge to the product, right? So you can kind of see how all the pieces come together to make up that immersive experience that you have while you're eating your cereal. So what value does user experience bring to the overall process, right? Project process. So we're in technology, right? So we've got all these different things we have to balance. So from a business perspective, we want to know if something is viable, right? That's where the business comes in. We've got the goals, we've got the requirements, we've got the budget, we've got all those kinds of business constraints that come in. We're probably all very familiar with those when we're working with clients and stakeholders. And then we've got the bit where, is it desirable? Does the user need it? You know, the clients, the stakeholders have their own ideas about what they think their users want, but is that actually true? And the designer can come in and ask those questions like, okay, we've understood now what the business wants, we know what you're trying to achieve, we understand your vision, but does this actually line up with what your users' behaviors are and what their needs are? And we go and we find that out. Once we know those two pieces of the puzzle, that's where the feasibility comes in, right? We work with technology, we work with the developers to find the technology that suits, that can actually feasibly, within the constraints that we've been given by the business and with what we know the users need, can actually implement that design solution. So a designer's role is that we actually can go between all of these different areas, kind of find that sweet spot there right in the middle. That's the balance, right? So we've got all these different constraints, we've got all these different needs that we have to balance, and it's working to find a solution that meets all three of those areas. And by the way, if you're finding yourself asking the question, do you need a designer? The answer is yes, you do need a designer. You should get one right away. All right, so what skills make up a UX designer? A lot of times it's really about, we talk about the software and we talk about, you know, understanding how to use the software and, you know, can you understand hierarchy of information, or can you understand, you know, where to put the boxes on the page, or how to use colors and typography. And again, that's a very visual thing, and that's important, but when I think of what skills make a designer, and especially a UX designer, there's a whole lot more to it than that. And this is what I learned as I was making the transition from, you know, primarily doing print design into digital and UX design. And a lot of these are skills and are things that, you know, we just kind of have innately. Like, we have an empathy for people, right? We want to know what people are thinking and how they feel, and that empathy leads into a curiosity about people, a curiosity about the world. It makes us ask why and how. As a designer, we're always asking those questions. We always want to get to the bottom of something. You know, we hear something that a stakeholder says or a client, you know, well, I don't like this. Well, why is that? You know, let's probe, let's find out a bit more about what you're actually thinking and what the root of the issue is. And the same thing with users. You know, we really want to understand behavioral patterns that our users have. And again, these three are very closely connected here: the empathy, that curiosity that drives us to know more, to explore. Not being afraid to ask, why is this the way that it is, right? And it's by doing all of those things that we're able to solve problems. It's that ability to kind of think outside of the box for problem solving, because as designers and developers, we know, like, we have a lot of very complex and challenging problems to solve, and a lot of those come from the stakeholders that we work with, and the design solutions and the development solutions that we're required to create to meet, again, going back to our constraints we were talking about a little bit ago. What problems, what solutions can meet all of those needs? And finally, being a communicator of design, I think, is really important. You can design something really beautiful, but at the end of the day, if you can't communicate what that design does and why you designed it that way and what your thought process was, and you can't articulate that back to a stakeholder or a developer, then I don't feel like, as a designer, that I've really done my job well, right? Because if you can't understand it, and if I can't explain to you why something is important or why I made the decision that I did, then, you know, it's just a design, and I don't want to hold it so closely and so preciously that I can't explain that to you and then hear your feedback and say, all right, maybe this isn't communicating the right thing. But as a designer, it's very, very important, and I'll mention this a little bit again in a little bit here, but articulating that design process and that design rationale. And I'm sure as developers, that's probably a really important thing for those of you who are the developers in the room as well, is being able to communicate why you do the things you do. All right, what does a UX designer do specifically? So we talked about the kind of 6 core disciplines of UX design. So this is a little bit kind of repeating that as well, but so you can kind of see all the different areas that UX can touch. So when you get a designer involved, kind of the first early stages of the process, which I'll talk about here in just a couple minutes. So business discovery. So we kind of talked about, what is the business constraints and the timeline and the budget and the business goals and the vision. Bringing designers in, as part of the team early on to understand all of those things and kind of build that foundation for what it is that we're going to be building. Again, communicating design, which I just talked about, facilitation, that kind of goes hand in hand with the business discovery and really making sure you can facilitate conversations with stakeholders, facilitating conversations with developers and other team members, planning and executing UX approach. So what is the plan? What are we going to take? What methods, what design methods are we going to use? And then there's a lot of, we talked about user research and testing and information architecture. Wireframes and prototyping fall into that interaction design category as well. So designers then kind of touch all of those areas as well as visual design. And some designers can do all of these things. Some designers are specialists. So you might have a designer who's more specialized in visual design or a designer who is more specialized in doing the research or the user testing. I find at ThoughtWorks that we generally have to do a lot of these things. We're kind of asked to have to do a little bit of everything. Same within my previous role, I also found myself having to touch all of these different areas. And I definitely was a bit stronger in others, some more than others, but I think these days that I'm actually doing a lot more of the business discovery and the communication and the facilitation and sort of execution of plans than a lot more of the kind of visual and interaction design, but that's good. It's kind of good to have a nice variety of different things. All right, so what is the UX process? Again, I kind of just mentioned what do designers do. A lot of these things you're kind of going to see here in this process where all of those different areas touch. So in the understanding phase, we kind of talked about business discovery and user research, so that's where a lot of those things come into play. Here is this first phase where we take the time to understand, again, what problem are we solving, who are our users, what are the business requirements. It's a lot of upfront discovery. We don't know a whole lot at this point, but that's really our job, is to ask the right questions and get to know the people that we're going to be designing for. So then once we have that information, we move into the definition phase, which again is what is our problem space? We know a little bit more now that hopefully we can start to come up with actually a problem statement. What are we trying to solve for? Okay. We kind of bring in a lot of the insights from the research at that point. Hopefully we've done our due diligence and we've gathered all that we need to know so that we have enough information to be able to define the problem clearly. Once we've got that defined, we move into the ideation stage. So this is the point in the process where we can start to, we probably have already been thinking of some possible ideas and solutions, but this is really the part of the phase or the process that we can start to explore all of that. So there might be some sketching, there might be some early wireframes. Ideally, developers will be part of the process at this point as well. If I have my way, I would be ideating with developers early on in this stage. And then we move into the prototyping phase, which is where we're actually starting to put some of those ideas a bit more concretely. So we've kind of explored a lot of different things, and now we kind of narrow our focus, and we kind of say, oh, we know what ideas we think will actually work, and we probably have our solution pretty close to defined at this point, and we've been working to define the tech stack as well. So we're in the prototyping phase, so we're able to actually explore how users are going to be interacting with that. So then we move from there into testing phase, right? So then we want to actually get feedback about how are the users responding to what we put in front of them. And the more often that we can do this, and we can go back and we can keep iterating, the better that we are, the more that we know, right? Because you don't want to get to the point where you're putting something out, having no idea what the users are going to say about it, and then it being kind of too late for you to go back and be able to make any changes at all. So having a designer and developer pairing this whole time, I think, is really ideal because, again, we know we're building the right thing, we've got the right solution. The developers and the designers can be kind of offering feedback to one another this whole time, and I actually think it's really great for developers too to kind of see what happens in this early ideation phase and testing phase as well, and really getting a lot of that feedback and kind of seeing firsthand what users have to say. Because it kind of helps, I think, from what I found in my experience, developers want to know why they're doing the things they're doing as well. And getting those user insights and feedback can actually help inform why you're building what you're building and why the designer probably has made the choices that they've made. So that is a perfect segue into talking about how UX designers and developers can work together. So as I mentioned earlier, I feel really strongly about this. I've been in situations where development and UX have been completely separate, and we kind of, what we like to say is a more waterfall approach, or where we actually sort of hand off work or toss it over the fence, some of those phrases you maybe have commonly heard. And my favorite approach is bringing in the developers as early as possible into the process. So collaborating early and often. And as I mentioned before, actually getting them in during the ideation phase of the project. Ideally, even during business discovery. If that all possible, having developers at the table early on to understand what the sort of foundation of the project is, what the business requirements are, and throughout the whole process, then again, understanding what designers are doing, what the ideation process is. I found getting developers into Sketch is actually a really fun thing, because they're a bit hesitant at first to kind of come in and I'm not a good sketcher, I'm not a good drawer, but actually I get a lot of my best ideas from working with developers. So this is why I love to bring them in. And I'm going to kind of skip down here. We can form each other's work. We learn a lot from each other, I found. And so if you're working with a designer and you're kind of being a bit sort of closed off to their approach, hopefully they're not, but ask to see what they're working on. Ask to see if you can be part of a collaboration session, or if you can sketch, or if you can give them feedback on their work. And if you're giving feedback, what works and what doesn't. You see a lot of different things. As a developer, I know you see a lot of different stuff. You work on a lot of different projects, probably a lot of different types of technology. So you can offer a lot of good perspectives to what a designer does. And I found it personally really helpful to hear from developers, I've seen this work or hasn't worked in the past, and I don't want to design something personally that isn't going to be feasible. We kind of talked about that feasibility a little bit ago, but it's not going to be feasible. It's actually going to break something, or it's going to cause a timeline to be not achievable because of something I've designed. So I want to talk to you guys and communicate early in the process to understand that what I'm designing is actually going to be something that can be built. So if you've got a situation where you have worked with a designer before, or you are a designer and you're working with developers, just go talk to them, go sit with them, go ask them what they're working on, ask them to show you your work or show you their work. Just offer some kind perspectives on what you've seen and sketch together. All of these things, all of these activities that you can do, the more often that you're talking to one another, build trust. And to me, that's the most important thing, because if we're working together, we need to be able to trust each other if we're going to actually put out the best product in the end for our clients and for our users. And, as a designer, I know I'm not going to give you my design, and as a developer, you're going to take it and just, do whatever you want with it. And as a developer, you're going to trust me as a designer to know that I'm not going to design something and be so precious about it that I can't bear to see you change it when it gets to the development phase, right? So by communicating more often, we can hopefully break down those walls and understand what each other is doing, and asking questions. I think that's a big thing as well. We talked about curiosity and empathy. Those don't just apply to working with users, they apply to each other and our teams. So sometimes just taking a step back and just asking questions of each other and having empathy for what each other does in your roles and the different things, the different constraints that you're working within, I think goes a long way to building that trust and that unity with developers and designers, because it should really be like this. UX and development working together happily, and everybody's happy, and we're solving problems together, because at the end of the day, we really all want the same thing, right? So we really want to build the best solutions that we possibly can. We want to build good stuff. We want to design good stuff. We want it to work well. We want it to look good, designers. We care about it looking beautiful, but more than that, we care about it being functional, and we care about, we want it to be something that's not going to give you guys, developers, a heart attack once you get it. It's like, what is this? It's the first time I've seen it, and kind of freaking out, and how do we make this happen? We've got this grand, beautiful design, but it's not actually something that can be built within the time that we have. And personally, that's not what I want. So, and I know that's not what you guys would want either. So working together, communicating, collaborating early on in the process, sharing ideas with one another will help us get there. So if you're interested in learning more about UX and more resources, here's a few things that I have used in the past. A couple of websites, a couple of books. The top book, Articulating Design Decisions, is one of my personal favorites. It doesn't really deal with a lot of sort of UX methodology, but it does talk about how to communicate design. And there's even a section in there, a chapter, it's called something like For the Non-Designer or something along those lines. I can't remember exactly, but it's written specifically for people who aren't designers, who are developers or who are clients or stakeholders, to kind of understand what designers do and have a bit of a window into the design world. But really it's just an overall great book. A lot of these other ones are more about sort of kind of more UX principles or methodologies. The bottom one is pretty good if you're interested in psychology and learning about people. So I'd highly recommend that. But yeah, any questions that you guys have about UXy things that I didn't clarify enough or want to know more about? Yes.
So we're a relatively small company, so we haven't managed to justify having a UX members. So
Yes.
we've had experience trying to contract a UX member from UX, so someone to do a UX, but what we've had problems with is trying to give the context to that UX designer of what our customers are actually doing. Do you have any advice or things we could think about to do that?
Yeah, so contracting a UX designer and wanting to give them advice into
It's
customer
hard to give
insights.
the context
Yeah, context.
to how our users actually use our products.
Okay, but do you have all of that information? You've got everything gathered. You have the
Well,
insights.
yeah, that's the hard thing though, because we're the developers. And that's part of the process, right? That's why you have the advocate as one on staff, is because then they have more time to get steeped in the way that you guys do business, the way your customers use your products.
Okay.
Like, because how do you say, well, how do your customers use your products? You don't know. You have to really be there and see how the customers use it. Is there any way to do that, or really do you have to have someone stand?
Yeah, by being there and seeing how the customers use their products, it's really, I think, if I was gonna say, if you have that information already, like it's something that you have done the research, you've got it documented, but I would, it's always things you can share, but I would definitely say the best way is to just actually get with the users and sit down and watch them and observe and see how they interact with it. And, first-hand experience is always best, of course. So if it's something you haven't done already, then I would encourage you to sit with the designers and, if you have a small company, that everybody even does it together, because the more of you that understand, of course, that getting everyone involved as early in the process as possible is better for everybody. I think it's just getting them, finding the users, and if you don't know, well, it sounds like you would know who your user base is. You've got the people, yeah. So get them all together, get them in the same room, or have them. Contextual inquiry is my favorite. It's kind of a fancy way of saying being with the users in their environment or whatever situation, kind of watching them kind of in their natural habitat, if you will, like their natural environment. How are they using the thing? So, or what is their normal process like, and are there gaps or opportunities that we can identify for where our products can kind of fit in? So stuff. I hope that answers your question.
Cool.
But, yeah.
If I can take a crack at that one.
Yeah.
Having made all of these mistakes in my career, fire dev and hire designer, and just do it now. And the reason is that if you just have if it only does creating a product, you're not going to sell that product the way you will if you just have a design up front. It's something that I've come to in different ways over different companies, but you have to engage with the customers. You have to understand how people are using your product, why people are using your product, where they stumble, and just be utterly diligent about refining all that friction out of the product. And if you don't, you're just wasting your time. It feels good because you're working with people like you, doing stuff you understand, and it's less challenging than working with a designer, but you're foolish if you don't do it.
Just add my 2 cents. We don't expect a developer to walk in the door and be productive day one, right? most engineering teams don't. You expect a developer to come in, they need to learn the domain, they need to learn the code base, they need to understand it, and we expect that. So you budget for it, you plan for it. Why anyone would expect a contract, even a contract UX to come in and be understanding the product on day one and productive day one? You don't do that for an engineer. Why would you do that for the UX?
Yeah,
That's a good point, Brett.
Good point, yeah. Yeah.
So you have to give them time.
Yeah, the other thing I can add as a bit of advice is when you hire that designer, you'll hate them for about 3 months.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah, very good.
Hope not.
They're not doing their job, right? They don't do that.
Aw.
They got a challenge.
I hope you don't hate
But
it.
then, it takes time to build
Don't hate
that
the
trust.
designer.
Yeah.
It's true. I mean, like you said, I mean, it is. Like I say, it's a really important thing, building that trust. I mean, I don't know. I think there's some kind of, there's sort of like, I've observed that there's like some kind of natural animosity between developers and designers.
Just like
I've
developers
seen
in
it.
QA.
Yeah, and with
That's
in other
it.
roles. I don't want to speak for designers.
What's the common problem?
But I know that's why I like over the years I've been doing it, where I've seen like starting off where it was like design and develop totally separate, and then all of a sudden I started talking to developers, and it was like a whole new world for me. I was like, wait, these people are amazing. Like they can help me so much, and like I can't imagine designing anything separate from without talking to a developer so closely, because they just inform everything that I do. And I'm like, well, I could make this thing fantastic, but if it's really not feasible to be built, or I'm just blue skying the whole thing, then I don't want to know about it now, and I don't know. I mean, I would be with my developers, if we'd be literally moving things around on the screen together. I'd be sitting with them, my front-end developer, and like, oh, tell me, does this work? And she'd be showing me code, and then we'd be, adjusting things together. And so if you can have that, hopefully, or educate. If you bring a designer on staff, and maybe you can kind of educate them, to that way from day one, saying this is the culture of collaboration that we have, and this is how we work together, and that's the expectation. Because I think that's probably some of it as well, is the culture of there's kind of like that separation sort of naturally. It's not always an easy thing to bring them together.
To Anna's point, I think the problem is if you start with a team that has a UX from day one, you don't have that necessarily that animosity. If you've got an existing engineering team and you bring a UX in, the engineers are used to doing the design. They think they know how to design. They think they know how customers do stuff. And then the UX person shows them that there's a whole better way and a whole lot of stuff that you can do. And there is
both
that
ways.
tension from day one.
Yeah.
The engineers basically think that they're having everything they've ever done questioned. It's part of this. If you can avoid that early on, bring on a UX.
We already avoid that. Like we part of our specifications, we do wireframing and stuff like that. But it's product management who do that. And I'm a developer, right? So,
Design is as effective in every domain. You look at a consumer product, design is incredibly important. You look at a command line thing, some sort of system administrator using is a big. Do you span that whole domain?
So sorry, your question is are the designers like as important for different sort of like types of projects for design?
Wondering whether there are kinds of projects where the design is probably not going to be appropriate.
I mean, as a designer, I'd probably say design is always important, but I suppose and this is the other sort of kind of favorite designer answer is it depends, I guess. Like you kind of. But I suppose, like I said, if you find yourself sitting there going, boy, I really wish we had a designer. I think we need a designer. Then if you ask the question, you probably need one. There might be some projects. I don't know if I can really do a good example off the top of my head, but maybe a designer is not as important, depending on who. I think it's always who are you building it for, and who's kind of the end consumer of it. And I'm trying to find a good example. Is there a case where you can think of someone there's not going to be an end consumer of it to some degree? I mean, even if it's an internal system, or even if it's another developer who's an end consumer of it, I mean, someone's probably always going to be consuming it. So, and then depending on how sort of what the level of, good experience, I guess, as you want someone to have.
You're developing for a developer, you have the idea at least of how I as
you
a
are the
developer
user.
would like this.
It's
But,
true.
and some of our stuff is obviously that, but other of it isn't.
Yeah.
It's still user experience.
It is.
It is, yeah.
It's just that person happens to be performing that role.
Similarly.
Yeah.
It's like the example of Stripe, right? So that was like, mid-tier API payments processing previously, no one had ever given that any design consideration until Stripe came along. And you look at the success of Stripe, you look at the experience of Stripe, and it's outstanding. It's unlike anything we've seen before. So, but it can absolutely be applied to anything.
I've certainly seen bad command line programs, so I wish I could design.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
There are, it's a matter of whether
Yeah.
a designer can get
But-
their head around the sort of technical aspects of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, even when I was doing print design, I think that's how I kind of knew I was getting ready to be a UX designer. I didn't even realize it, but I mean, people consume, printed materials all the time, and I was thinking like, well, how does this feel in somebody's hand, or what size should I make it so it can fit into their handbag or it can fit into their pocket, and it's kind of all of those, different aspects, and it was kind of a cool way of thinking about it, right? It's just a different, it's different to technology, I guess, like what are the different kind of ways that it's going to be consumed, or places, or again, going back to, oh, am I in an airport, or I'm in a museum, or, my whatever the Alexa or I don't know, the Google Home thing. Even there's so many different avenues for it now that we're designing for. It can cross so many different ways, but if someone's consuming it in the end. So, I mean, as designers, we always want to be part of it. So, but I think at the same time, other members of the team and developers especially, I think it was to your point, they've been doing it already. Sometimes developers do kind of, or other roles, and kind of take on the function of a designer, which is something I think is important, not to be overlooked, because just because you don't call yourself a designer doesn't mean that you can't. Now, I suppose sort of in saying that, one caveat is no, not everyone is a designer, but just because you don't call yourself a designer doesn't mean that you don't have something to offer to the process, or you don't have a different perspective. And my hope for designers would be that we could try to have a little bit more of that open mind of okay, I might just hear what you have to say, and it might not be a great idea, or it might not be something that we should actually do, but it's another perspective, and it's not something that I'm not too close-minded to my work, too close to my work, I guess, if you want to say. So, anyway, any other questions?
Thank you.
Yeah.